How is it that after so many eons of marriage, we still struggle to get it right? In fact, I think it's safe to argue that we're getting worse at marriage rather than better. And that's something that always confounds me. It always confuses the hell out of me, is to understand why it is that with more practice in something like this, with more examples, we seem to just keep getting worse and worse and worse rather than better. And the one thing that I've realized that I try to remind everyone about is that any relationship, especially marriage, focusing on what's the problems in the marriage itself is actually not the right way to go about fixing it or improving it. Because when you focus on the problems, you're only going to focus on problems. And then you end up believing that you got more problems than goodness, because the goodness is what it is that is kind of like in between all the problems, because that's where your focus is, right? You look at the problems in your relationship and you think, maybe we're just not meant for each other. And if there's one statement that really grates me, it's that meant to be statement. Because who decides if it's meant to be? The one that comes very closely after that is about what I deserve. Who deserves what? Who determines who deserves what? That's a transaction. That's a significant, healthy indulgence of arrogance to determine whether something is deserving or not. I mean, if it's something simple, straightforward, like I mentioned to someone recently, if you look at your child and you say, well, listen, I need you to clean your room, and if you clean your room, I'm going to give you ice cream, right? Because they too young to realize that it's a bribe. But seriously. So you tell them, okay, I'm going to give you ice cream, you clean your room. And they go and they just like throw some things around and dump some things in the cupboard, and they come back and they say, okay, where's my ice cream? And you go and look at the room and you think, you didn't clean your room, so you don't deserve that ice cream. That's because of an agreement. That's because you said, I need you to do something because it's going to be good for you and it's going to help me. And and because of that, I will reward you. I will show you appreciation by giving you something in return, right? That's completely different. That's about deserving your part of the deal, your outcome. But when it comes to life, and it comes to relationships, and it comes to ease and comfort and all of that, who's to determine who deserves what? And it's not just about the deserving part that is problematic. That's a distraction. But coming back to the marriage thing that we just get horribly wrong all the time, is that same example with the child, we start using that to trade for benefits with our partners. And the one realization I had the other day, which is quite a cynical one, is that most marriages are people who have slaves with benefits. And I mean both sides, not just one side, right? And that's what you need to be careful of. Are you with a slave for benefits? Not friends with benefits, because majority of people who get married, they stop being friends. And that's the saddest part, is that they say you must get married to your friend, but then when you get married, you stop being friends, because it's like the friendship is taken for granted, and then there's expectations and rights and responsibilities. And the one thing that always happens is that the moment any married couple is focusing on rights and responsibilities, you're in trouble. And that's why I can't for the life of me figure out why it is that every single time someone comes up with discussions about their marital issues, the fixation is on rights and responsibilities. There is not a single one, and I mean this, not a single marriage that I've ever come across that became a healthier relationship because they suddenly decided they're going to honor each other's rights and responsibilities. All it did was it took the contention relating to the transactions and it reduced it. That's it. But it didn't create a marriage. It didn't create a bond of companionship. It just made two people get along a little bit better. That's it. But their fulfillment, and go and look at it closely and you'll see their fulfillment that they want from life, they still went and looked for it elsewhere. Not necessarily in infidelity and cheating and other relationships, but they would have their own personal extracurricular activities that they would pursue independent of their marriage, because that's what they needed to feel like all of this at home was worth it. And that's why if you don't solve the right problems, you create new problems, because then eventually you grow old and bitter together. or complacent, one of the two. But there's nothing passionate about life in living that way. So coming back to the point about relationships, the relationship is a symptom of the two people in that relationship, two people participating or interacting in that relationship. So if you don't like the way the relationship is going, you need to consider what is the contribution from both parties that's giving rise to that unpleasantness in the relationship. And we all believe that we have good intentions and we operate with good intentions. And even if we do something that we know is going to be unpleasant for the next person, we believe our intentions behind why we justified in doing it is still honorable and still justifiable. That's why we'll do it anyway. So if you're going to look at intentions, then you've got a problem again. Because if I consider what your intention is, I'm going to consider it from my frame of reference. So I'm going to judge your behavior, and I'm going to consider that if I was in your position, I would only do that if this is what my motives were, what my intentions were. And then I'll insert that as a truth about why it is that you're treating me that way or behaving that way or not doing what I asked you to do. And that is where we fall apart in relationships. We make assumptions without healthy conversation, without healthy communication. And communication is not about tools and methods and skills. Communication is about understanding. If you understand something well enough, you don't have a problem communicating it to others. If you understand your needs well enough, you don't have a problem communicating that to others. But if you just know that you need to feel a certain way, but you don't know how you're going to be able to feel that way, then you're going to have a problem communicating it. You're going to only be able to tell people how it is, or tell your partner how it is that you don't like what they're doing. And what you need them to do, you're not going to know. You're just going to know every single time they're not getting it right, and vice versa. And that's why this is not a gender-specific issue. It's from both sides. It just plays out differently because we have different natures and different characters. But the lack of understanding, the lack of empathy, the lack of compassion, in fact, one of the saddest things that I consistently see is that there's an absence of empathy and compassion between partners. People who are dedicating their life to each other, they don't have empathy and compassion for each other because they're in defense mode. They constantly feel like they're under attack from both sides, not just one side. And that's the problem. The assumptions we make about the motives of the people that we're with, just because we find it difficult to have a meeting of the minds, we automatically assume ill intent, willful disobedience or rebelliousness or selfishness or something or the other. So when it comes to marriage and relationships, that's what we get wrong. We don't see the person we're with. We see the expectation we have of them. And like I mentioned previously, we look at people and we're judging them. We're judging them for adequacy, for significance. We're judging them for the value that we think that they bring. We're judging them for how it is that we think they respect what is important to us. It's all judgments. We're not seeing the person, the human, who in their own way might be trying to actually get something right, or in their own way might be struggling with something, which is why they don't realize they're getting something wrong. And then we write them off. We write the person off because of specific incidents or specific behavioral traits without trying to actually gain understanding in that. And that's why relationships these days don't last. Because no one wants to struggle together and grow together. Everyone's testing each other to see if they're paying attention. Are you noticing what is important to me? Are you realizing how much it is that I do? When you start comparing notes like that, you're making assumptions that are so horribly misinformed. It just creates 1,000 more problems instead of solving any problems at all. And again, the genders are different. Men operate differently. Women operate differently. Men experience things differently. Women experience things differently. If you had to experience and operate everything in the same way, then you'll be competing with each other, or you'll be completely bored with each other because there'll be no variety, no spontaneity, nothing. Everything will just be predictable. And it'll be like, yeah, okay, it makes sense to do it that way, so let's just do it that way and move on. What's exciting about life then? You're supposed to be enriching each other, and you can't enrich each other if you don't add something new to each other's lives. But if you go into marriage and you've got this victim headspace about how you're going to claim what is yours now because life has treated you unfairly, and you're tired of life in your parents' house, and you're tired of the way your last partner treated you if you were in a relationship before, etc., you're going to go in there claiming for yourself what it is that you're not going to allow your partner to do to you, like how people before them did certain things to you or treated you a certain way. And that's how you contaminate your fresh start in life with all your baggage from the past. And then when it doesn't work out, then you convince yourself that maybe we're just not compatible. What about you is not compatible then? What is the real essence of the problems that you guys are experiencing that gives you reason to believe that compatibility is the issue rather than understanding, empathy, compassion, sensitivity, visibility? Simple stuff, basic stuff. But if you weren't raised in a way that sensitized you to the importance of that, then those become your hang-ups. So if you're raised in a space where you felt as if every time you had an opinion about something you were shut down, guess what? You're not going to take kindly to not being taken seriously about your opinion when you get married. Because when you get married, there's a whole lot of expectations beyond just the rights and responsibilities. It's about how you expect to be treated, what space you expect to occupy in that person's life, how you expect to be influential and significant in shaping how your home must be and how it must be experienced and what the ambience must be, how the tone must feel, how it's going to be decorated, how it's going to reflect your personality, all of those things. Those are expectations that we don't necessarily speak openly about because most of the time we don't even realize that is important to us. We just expect it to be part of the norm because this is how a healthy couple is supposed to be. But then we don't know what compromise looks like. And that brings me to another important point. If you're in a marriage and you're constantly focusing on who's compromising what, then you're not in a healthy marriage. You're not in a healthy relationship because a healthy relationship is not about compromise. Yeah, and this might sound crazy because a lot of people say marriage is about compromise. It's not about compromise. A transactional relationship is about compromise because then I'm willing to compromise this in this transaction because in the next transaction I expect you to compromise something in return. That's not marriage. That's not life. That's business. And if you want to turn your marriage and your life into a business transaction or transactions, then don't expect to get fulfillment from it. Don't expect to get joy and love and understanding and visibility and significance and all those other wonderful things because the only thing that is going to be in it for you is about whether or not your transaction balances. And if your transaction balances, it takes away your reason to complain, but it doesn't give you a reason to celebrate. We've become so shallow in the way we approach life. We think everything is about instant gratification, or we think everything is about rights and responsibilities. Ugh. Rights and responsibilities is the most boring way to approach anything. There's a basic understanding and a balance that you have to create with your partner because of the uniqueness of what each of you are bringing to the table. Don't go on social media and go and point out to the world how it is that your partner is doing this and doing that and asking them to tell you if it's right or wrong or you're being unreasonable. They don't know your partner and they don't know your life and they don't know your partner's life and they don't know your background and they don't know his background and they don't know any of that. It's not about gender specific, even though I might use gender from time to time. It's just force of habit. It's got nothing to do with who is responsible for the problems. The point is, if you're going to go to someone to ask them whether you are being taken advantage of or something, be damn sure that you are being fair and honest and transparent about the full picture, not just what you don't like about that picture. Because that's where we go wrong. And if you need to go to someone else without having exhausted that conversation with your partner, that means that you're making assumptions about why it is that they're doing what they're doing. And then those assumptions become your truths, and your truths become your battle cry. You do this, not this is how I experience what you do, or this is what I don't like about the way you do something. You do this, you make me feel like this, and you make me feel like that. That's not a healthy relationship. So rights and responsibilities, that's there for civil disputes. And if you get into the point of civil disputes, then you can revisit that and you can consider, okay, well, how do we arrive at this point where we are actually blatantly taking each other's rights and responsibilities for granted? But that's already a step too far. By that time, you've got significant disruption and significant issues that you're trying to solve. But if you have disruption, if you have dysfunction in your relationship and it's not at that fever pitch yet, where you need external intervention and mediation, then resorting to emphasizing rights and responsibilities and agreements and all of those sorts of things is not going to solve problems. It's going to create new problems, because all it's doing is it's shutting down the human and it's replacing them with a business transaction, with an agreement, with a contract. And if you want a contract, then why get married? Contract service providers to provide what you need, and depending on your belief system, you can decide whether you want to contract everything else as well. But it's not going to give you fulfillment, because you can't contract fulfillment. You can't contract feeling significant, because you know you're paying someone for that. And that's what you do with your marriage. When you transact like that in your marriage, in your relationships that are important, you deny yourself the fulfillment of someone else's spontaneous contribution to you, to what it is that's important to you, to how it is that they want to show up for you. And that's why we lose it. We lose it because we lose sight of all of these things, and we're so focused on making sure that no one's going to take advantage of us. And if no one's going to take advantage of us, that means that our partners especially, they better do what it is that they said they were going to do, or else they're going to have to deal with me. Seriously? We've lost the plot. When it comes to relationships between two people, we've lost the plot. Because everything is a label, everything is a contract, everything is a right or responsibility, and everything is so clinically defined that we measure each other based on that, and we don't see the human anymore. It's like the example I like to use to just demonstrate this point is, if you have two people that went through university and qualified and then became professionals, let's say they became doctors, and you just, apart from competence, skill, you assume that they're both equal. You completely diminish what it is that got them to that point as humans, not as professionals. And we're talking about seeing the human here. We're not talking about seeing the role player. Another important point. We keep looking at our partners as role players. We don't see them as humans. And that's usually because we don't see ourselves as humans either. We see ourselves as a role player in different people's lives. And then we evaluate how it is that our role in their life is being honored, or how it is that we expect them to show up in our life because of the role that they play for us. We don't consider how it is that the human is actually experiencing it. So in that case with the two doctors, if the one was born into poverty and had to really fight and show grit and resilience and tenacity and resourcefulness to be able to make it into university all the time and travel, and subsistence was a difficulty for them as well because they didn't have a lot of resources or finances. And it was a genuine struggle, but they pushed through all of that with grit and determination and conviction because they saw the value of becoming a doctor. And you got the other person that's going to become a doctor because it's a lucrative profession. They're not the same. And they're not going to treat their patients the same way. And they're not going to have the same levels of empathy and compassion and understanding and sincerity in how it is that they approach the difficulties that their patients present them with. And that's what we lose sight of. We celebrate the title and we forget the merit of the individual. And the merit of the individual is a combination of what competence they bring to the table and how it is that they went through their journey to acquire and develop that competence. Why don't we see people more than just what's on the surface? Are we lazy? Or are we too selfish? Or do we not even realize that we should? And I think it's more the latter. It's more that we have this blind spot that no one told us about, and that's why we didn't bother to check for it, because the pervasive ignorance out there about marriages and relationships is so horrendous right now that I cringe when I look at some of the advices that are being given on social media and by people who claim to be experts and gurus and influencers in their field. Majority of the advice you get online about how to navigate difficulty in relationships, how to establish good relationships, majority of it is problematic. And the reason I say it's problematic is because if that volume of advice that's out there was not problematic, we wouldn't see increasing levels of dysfunction and failure in relationships. And then we wonder why it is that we have an increase in all of these other behavioral traits why we have problems with people and their identity and their sexual orientation and narcissistic tendencies and violence and abuse and all of these things. It's because the very fundamental building blocks of being human is being eroded and neglected. But if we don't realize that, we're never going to look for that in our relationships, right? We're not going to see the human we're with, we're going to see the person who owes us something. And that's where we go wrong. Men look at women and say, yeah, you're at home all day with the kids, what do you know? You got it easy. And women look at men who are in traditional roles and they say, oh, well, you just go to work every day and you enjoy your time with your profession and with your colleagues and everything else. And you come home and you're tired and you've got no time for me and the kids. Where's the human in either of those? And anyone that spent any amount of time trying to console a troubled child will know that the emotional drain that puts on you is significantly more than the emotional drain that your boss might put on you. But anyone who spent time in a corporate environment or working for a boss, or even being a boss and dealing with clients, and that will know that the amount of indignity that you have to suffer and insult and struggle and patience that you have to endure because of the impact it will have on your revenue to be able to provide for your family. You'll know that that's intensity that you won't feel at home because there's a different consequence if you don't bear that. So if we're going to write people off because of what we think is the utility of what it is that they provide and how easy it is for them to do it, then we're not seeing the human again. We're not seeing their struggle. We're not seeing their dedication. And this always comes up. And traditionally, man is a provider, woman is a nurturer. Our innate nature drives us towards that as well. But for various reasons, there's a change in the balance in society where those roles are often either reversed or are shared. And when they're shared or they're reversed, striking a balance then becomes that much more difficult because most of the time we don't have healthy role models or frames of reference that we were exposed to that helps us to navigate that with ease and in a way that creates balance and harmony in the home. And then we become defined by our roles. And that's why we have such a big problem between men and women who are supposedly conflicting in the roles that they play in the home. Where did we go wrong? We went wrong with not trying to understand. That's where we went wrong. We went wrong with not seeing the human in ourselves and therefore not being able to recognize the human in the person that we're with. I see so many people who say that we're in it for the long haul. We got married for ever and ever. That was the intention. But they don't posture themselves. They don't position themselves in the relationship as if they are in it for the long haul. They position themselves on day to day. Short-term gains, short-term evaluation of whether or not this is working for them. And if it's not working for them, then they start preparing themselves for life after. They don't look at what is it that's not working and why is it not working and let's remedy this. And this is not only one person. It's like often both parties are in that mindset because that's what the pervasive ignorance in the social spaces, that's the pervasive ignorance that it drives you towards, that you focus on how it is that you need to protect yourself from how your partner is treating you. If you're protecting yourself from how your partner is treating you, then it's not a partner. It's at best an acquaintance that you have an agreement to try to achieve certain outcomes with. When did we stop getting this right? Or did we ever get it right? I don't know. There's too many questions about this and too few answers. And that's why we need to focus on understanding so that we can develop a different understanding and a different volume of information that we can work with that gives us insight and wisdom about how to navigate this more effectively so that we don't keep paying it forward in ways that are going to repeat the mistakes of the past generations just in a different context because we have different toys and different tools with which to make those mistakes. In the past, when we were outsourced in our parenting, in how our parents were, because we played in the streets and that had its benefits for us, but it also didn't always give us enough face time with our parents to derive wisdom about life and about people. And then that would have been the equivalent of what social media is today. And the next thing will be some other distraction, social media 2.0 or something, about maybe more immersive virtual realities that again distort our understanding of how to be human. We've lost the plot because we're distracted. We didn't lose the plot because we have no way of knowing better. And that's the victim mindset that prevents us from being curious and critical about ourselves before we want to be curious and critical about others. And that's the thing. We're always directing our focus on how others are doing things to us. And then we convince ourselves that we feel that way because of the way they're treating us. But we don't consider how it is that we might be party to the cycle that we are unhappy with them. What's the point of all of this? See the human that you're with and see the human within yourself. If you don't, you're going to keep making the same mistakes that the generations before you made. You're just going to do it in a different context. That's all. So if you have a problem in a relationship, you see the relationship as a symptom of the contribution from both parties. The relationship itself is not the problem. It's about what it is that is being miscommunicated or passing each other that you're not realizing. You're assuming that you're communicating clearly and it's willfully being rejected on the other side instead of recognizing that, hold on, what I'm communicating is being received a different way because there's a need on that side that I'm not recognizing, so I'm not incorporating that into what I'm communicating. It's like if I need someone to show some consideration for me and they're not doing that and they're pointing out legitimately how it is that I'm not being considerate about them, in the back of my mind I'm thinking, that's rich. You're not considering me, but you're asking me to consider you. That's not going to lead to understanding. That's going to lead to the conclusion that, oh, well, maybe we're just not compatible. No. That's a lazy, intellectually lethargic way of resolving things. If you get to a point where you believe that you're not compatible, there has to be substance to it. There has to be meaningful insight and understanding about why it is that, yes, we believe that this is what I subscribe to, that's what you subscribe to, this is what's important to me, that's what's important to you. I have no reason to want to change this, and I understand why it is that won't be good for you, and vice versa. And amicably and civilly, we end up agreeing that, okay, no, this is not working. Let's go our own ways because we're just looking to create two different lives, right? And that's something that can happen. But show me how many people actually have that kind of maturity and understanding and composure when they have that final discussion as opposed to bitterness and anger. And if there's bitterness and anger that leads to the breakdown of the relationship, you're solving the wrong problem by breaking up the relationship, especially marriage. Because the only reason you get bitter or angry at someone is because they are significant to you and you're feeling insignificant to them. I'll say that again because it's that simple, but yet we don't get it. You don't become angry at someone about what it is that you're not getting from them if they are not significant to you. Right? But the reason you're getting angry at them is because you believe that you're not significant to them. So think about that when two people are arguing all the time in a relationship, in marriage. They're both working with the assumption that the other one doesn't care, but they both care enough to make the other one care. Is it just me, or does that sound ludicrous? But that's how we lose ourselves to common sense. We lose the common sense in what it is that is playing out because we're so emotionally incensed about what it is that we are dealing with. And that's the victim mindset. If you believe you're a victim of your partner's behavior, you're not going to see your partner's struggles and vice versa. There's just no logical conclusion to this conversation right now that I can think of because it always ends up at the same point. And that is the simple realization that if you believe that you are committed to trying to make this work in the long term, it's a forever after kind of commitment that you made when you got married, then keep yourself honest. Have you genuinely operated as if you are solving long-term problems? Or have you been distracted by approaching things as short-term problems? Have you postured and positioned and established a balance and a harmony and understanding between you and your partner within the context of your longer term goals as a couple? Or are you focused on rights and responsibilities that talk about the here and the now only? What's the purpose of your marriage? What's the purpose of your relationship? What is it supposed to create as a joint initiative, a joint goal? And if you say it's just a good life, then you need to put some substance to that. What does a good life look like? Your good life might look different to your partner's good life. And then between those two, you need to come up with a balance that works for both of you. Because they might have something that is really amazing that you didn't consider, and you might have something that's really amazing that they didn't consider about what would be good about a good life. And if your idea of a good life is derived from all the idealisms and all of the fake lifestyles that you see on social media, then you've got a problem, because you're chasing a goal that you didn't define for yourself. You're chasing someone else's dream. And that's another problem as well. Too many people chase other people's dreams and they adopt it as their own, and then they think that their partners don't care. It's that if you are married, you should be developing a joint dream, a joint understanding, a joint balance, harmony, a joint strategy of, okay, this is what it is that we're dealing with. This is how you're going to provide valuable input from your capacity relative to my capacity versus what is demanded of me and what's demanded of you, and things like that. And here's, if you want to determine what's the health of your relationship, here's a simple reflection that you can do on your life. If you and your partner both have conflicting demands between the other people in your lives and what you need to do for each other, right? Those demands that are conflicting, do you fight with each other about how it is that you're not giving me enough time and you always got time for them but you don't have time for me and all of that? Or do you see each other's conflict as a legitimate conflict that your partner, the human you're with, the person you claim to love and cherish, do you see the pressure they're under to try and strike a balance between that, and you try to work out how it is that you can both make it easier for them to show up for those people that have legitimate expectations from them, versus how it is that they need to also have time for the home, for the marriage, for the children, for whatever it is that's important to you, and vice versa. So if you as a couple, you are looking towards how each other are experiencing life and how it is that you can then be there for each other to navigate this life together, then you have a healthy relationship. But if you're going to be focused on rights and responsibilities and who's more important and all of that, you're going to place you're going to place each other under so much undue stress that you're going to be forcing a test of loyalties, and no one wants to have their loyalties tested. Because yes, we need to establish healthy boundaries between our partners and extended family and social circles and things like that. I get that. But how you establish those boundaries and what that balance looks like has to be an understanding that is developed between you and your partner. It mustn't be some rules-based approach that says that I'm your wife or I'm your husband now, so I should enjoy 100% priority and then everyone else. It doesn't work like that. Because the person you're with, they didn't become the person that you fell in love with or that you thought was so amazing enough to get married to just because they woke up one day and they decided to be that person. It's those people around them that have those expectations and those rights and have those needs for significance and participation. Those are the people that actually helped shape your partner into the person that you thought was amazing enough to get married to. And if you don't learn to respect and appreciate how that affects your partner, so that you don't create tension between them and that background that they come from, those extended family members and their siblings and their blood ties and all of that. If you don't honor that for them, then you're not honoring your partner. You're not respecting your partner. You're not even considerate about your partner. You're only interested in what it is that your partner needs to do for you. And that's how we arrive at a point that feels like we're looking for slaves with benefits. Someone that's going to be a slave to what we need from them, and then in return, as a slave master, I will only give you what it is that you have a right for me to give you. It's ludicrous. And then you complain about not having companionship. You complain about not being understood. You need to check yourself for how it is that you're looking at the person that you claim is your significant other, and whether you're seeing the human in them or you're only seeing the deficit of everything that you're not getting from them. Mainstream mental health, mainstream social media, the gurus and the relationship counselors out there, they cause more problems than anything else, because there are very, very few. And I'll go on record as saying that the vast majority of relationship counselors cause more problems than they actually cause solutions. They give you methods and tools and tell you about boundary setting and crap like that, but they don't understand intrinsically what it is that needs to be understood between you and your partner so that you can reach your own harmony, rather than them imposing what their idea is of a healthy relationship. You make people aware of what is impacting what it is that they're trying to achieve, so that when they become aware of it, they can choose what they want to do about it. You don't tell them what they must do about it. Everyone is committed to wanting the best life they can have. Everyone's committed to wanting to be the best version of themselves. But if you take the approach to that within the context of believing you're a victim and no one's there to support you and everyone's a threat to that outcome, then you're going to be contaminating a lot of relationships that are otherwise extremely beneficial and supportive in you being able to achieve those outcomes. We need to get out of this victim headspace when we're in relationships, and we need to get out of this antagonistic, adversarial kind of approach to relationships. Like I saw, and you must have come across this on the millions of memes that are out there, but one of the gems that always is good to keep in mind is it's you and your partner against the problem. It's not you against your partner because of the problem. You and your partner to deal with the problem, not you fighting your partner because you've got a problem. And one final piece that I think is always worth considering is, if you truly believe that the person you're with is a good person, essentially, innately, there's a good human in there, then when they behave in a way that is untoward, that you don't like, that you don't appreciate, consider, why is it that this good person that I know is there? Why is it that they're behaving badly? And then you look for understanding so that you can be more effective in challenging what it is that you don't like about them, or correcting it, or having a conversation about it. But if you go with the assumption that they're woefully bad, that they're woefully and intentionally wanting to do something that offended you, or wanting to do something that is hurtful to you, or neglectful of what it is that you need from them, if that's going to be your mindset, you're in a victim headspace and you are diminishing the person that you're with, the person that you claimed was amazing enough for you to want to be with for the rest of your life. We need to become more aware of how we're showing up, rather than fixating on how someone is showing up for us. And hopefully that will create understanding and will create opportunity for harmony and collaboration, not compromise. Collaboration about what is the greater ideals that you both share about how you want to create an amazing life for you and your children. Take care.